This is a video regarding objection number 4 to the celebration of Christmas. And the objection states that the earlier fathers of the faith or the apostles didn't celebrate Christmas, and therefore Christmas is unbiblical. And as I always present, 1 Peter chapter 3, verse 15 said that we should be ready to give an answer to those who have any question regarding our faith. And we believe in celebrating Christmas, and therefore we should have an answer to give to the critics. Now, the fact of the matter is that we don't know for sure whether the earlier apostles celebrated it or not, because it was not documented. Doesn't mean they didn't celebrate it. And we know, for example, John chapter 15, John 21, verse 25, scripture say that some of the things Jesus did were not documented because they wouldn't fit in books. And therefore, the apostles focus on certain things that they would document in the epistles and so on and forth, and may not have documented everything that they observed or didn't observe. So the claim does not really stand. But besides that, we also have some historical context where we see that the church at that time was focused on preaching the resurrection of Christ. Acts chapter 2, Acts chapter 4. They were about the incarnation. They were on a survival mode because they were being persecuted. And that is what they were focused on, just getting through or getting by. They believed Jesus was coming soon, and so they were focused again on preaching those things rather than celebrations or observances. Now we see that the fact that the church at that time didn't celebrate certain things doesn't underscore the fact that it shouldn't be celebrated. And another thing to look at is the case of development, which has come into the church over time. So, for example, now we have a complete manuscript, that we have a Bible filled with pages, chapters and verses, and all those things which were not in. They didn't have those, and they had oral traditions. We have church buildings now which they didn't have at that time. And so all those things that we have today doesn't corrupt the church. It does really enhance the church, that now we can have bigger and larger groups, as opposed to when they had only the opportunity to meet in homes, not because they all wanted to, but there was no resources. And Peter and John, for example, in Acts chapter 3, went to the temple to pray. So they were not opposing to organized religions. They were organizing themselves. They were meeting together to pray. Acts 12, they met and prayed for Peter's release. So they had those things, but there was not resources to do that. So could it be that that was part of why they did not? And yet now, because we have the resources, we are able to observe certain things. So some of these things give us an answer to why they might not have celebrated, or why they didn't document if they celebrated it, because they were really on a crisis mode at that time, being persecuted and so on and forth. Now, we also see that Apostle Paul write to us in Romans and write against the Colossians about observing days and special festivals and so on. And he said that we shouldn't be condemned if we observe it, and we should not be concerned if we don't observe it. It's considered okay. So again, in Romans chapter 14 and also in Colossians chapter 2. Now, the 1 Corinthians chapter 10, verse 31, he gives us that whatever we do, whether we eat or drink or whatsoever we do, we should do it to honor or glorify the Lord Jesus Christ. 1 Timothy chapter 3, verse 16, Paul says, great is the mystery of godliness, that God was manifested in the flesh. And if he manifested, our God manifested in the flesh. There is nothing wrong in us observing his birth, whether it was on the 25th or not, and whether somebody celebrated it or not. There is nothing wrong in our observance. Christmas is not a law, it is not an ordinance, it is a celebration. And as we know in John chapter 10, Jesus Christ himself attended Hanukkah, which was an observation, a festival, which was not in the Mosaic law, but he attended it. Verse 22 and 23, Jesus was there. So there are observances that Jesus himself didn't condemn, and the apostles, if they're here today, they wouldn't condemn, because once again, Christmas is anchored about the Christ, who was God that became a man, and the things that he did for us that we need to remember and observe. In my last video, I did mention why I am so in strong support of celebration of Christmas, is because even other religions which we consider illegitimate are observing something. They have observations that are observed for every religion, every society, every community, every culture have something they celebrate. And we Christians, we celebrate Christ, his birth, his death. And there should be nothing that should stop us from that observance. So, ladies and gentlemen, if you have to answer anyone about this, you are now armed and equipped. Like it, share it, subscribe to this, so that the fifth video that comes up, you will be able to catch it also and be equipped. While you celebrate Christmas, celebrate it with full confidence that it is anchored and centered on Christ and not on traditions which are unnecessary. God bless you. This is Magnify Mercy, and we'll see you in the next video. God bless.